both in the consecutive runs hand, the consecutive run section. So the very first hand this year, you see it's the ones, two, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops, there's a typo. Oh my God. Let me see if I can correct it. I don't think I can correct it right now. Oh, I can. Good. There's only 2 5s. The idea is it's a pair of 5s and a pair of 1s, or on the upper end of the number line, it's a pair of 5s and a pair of 9s. The idea is it goes up in the middle. It starts and ends on the lowest point, and it builds up to the middle where the high point is with the 3s or the 7s. That is what I call the bell curve hand, because, low at the ends, high in the middle. And that hand actually doesn't just appear in the consecutive run section. I'm going to show you where else it is. You see it's on either end of the number line with the consecutive runs. We also see it in 2, 4, 6, 8. We also see it in many places on the odd section of the card. And there are 2 sort of secret bell curve hands. They don't exactly look like bell curve on the card, but if you look at them, it's that second 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 hand, where it has flowers and then the pair of 5s, or flowers and then the pair of 1s. I sort of, just to keep it in your mind as being a bell curve, I stick the flowers on the other end. So you remember you need the pair of the flowers and the pair of the lowest number, and then pungs each of the second number and the dragons, and then the high point is actually that third number. So do you see what I'm talking about here with the bell curve pattern? We're talking pairs on either end, then 3 of a kind, and then we've got our Kong in the middle. So that's the bell curve, and that's all over those sections this year. As I said, it's in the consecutive runs, even section, odd section. Those are where you'll find it. The other really important hand that you'll find this year is the 3-4 hand. Every year there's always a Pung and a Kong hand. Like, it has no pairs. It's only exposures. Every single meld in the hand can be called for an exposure. Every single meld can use jokers. And this way the hand cannot go dead, because even if somebody throws the tile that you need, you could still use jokers to complete that part of the hand. So I love those hands. They're very easy to learn. And the only trick each year is to remember, what order are they? Is it 3-4-3-4? Is it 3-3-4-4? This particular year, the CR2 hand is 3-4 in suit A, 3-4 in suit B. You see what I mean? 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind. And we switch suits for the second set. So again, it's all over the card. It's in the consecutive run section, that top hand. The second one is in the odd section, and it's got its lower end of the number line with 1, 3, 3, 5, or upper end 5, 7, 7, 9. Again, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind. It's also in the 2021 section. This can be a tricky question for people. When you see those 4 soaps, I've had people ask me, well, does that mean that this set of 2s has to be dots, because dots go with soaps? No, this could be any suit you want. This could be BAMs, this could be cracks, it could be dots. This suit has to match each other. The Kong of the 1s has to match the second Kong of 2s. But this 2 could be any other suit. And obviously the soaps are soaps. They have to be the soaps, or they can be jokers, which is what I love about this card this year, is that you can use those jokers to complete any Kong of soaps. It's very, very easy to complete that if you've got enough jokers. Okay, moving on. The funny thing, even though I showed you that here it is on the, that only got into here. It's also in the even section, 2, 4, 6, 8. It's also in the like number section, which is a little weird. This is the only part of the like number section that uses the 3 of a kind. Most of it is Kongs in the like number section. So don't forget, if you're going to go for this hand in like numbers, it's only 3 of a kind. It's not a 4 of a kind. So once you make that exposure, you're not going to be able to switch to a different like numbers hand. So make sure you're ready to do that before you make that exposure of 3 of them. The other place it shows up is on the 3, 6, 9 section. 3 and 6 in the first suit, 6 and 9 in the second. Again, with the Pung on the lower and then the Kong, and then Pung on the lower and then the Kong. So as I skipped ahead a little bit too quickly. What I wanted to show you is that even though that 3-4-3-4 shows up on so many sections of the card, it gets a little wonky when you get to the right-hand panel. Let's all look at the right-hand panel real quick. We have plenty of hands that are pungs and kongs, but they don't go in that 3-4-3-4 pattern. The most obvious is the one at the very top, that just wins hand with the 4 norths, 3 east, 3 wests, 4 souths. It's all pungs and kongs, but it's not in the order that we're looking for. It throws it off. It's a 4-3-3-4. The second one, the 3-6-9 dragons, again, not 3-4-3-4. It's 4-3-4-3. They're throwing a bit of a curveball in here so that we can't memorize it too easily. Likewise, this one, it's 4 of a kind, 2 kongs in one suit, and then matching pungs of 9s in the other 2 suits. All of these fit the categorization as a pung kong hand because there's no pairs. We can call for any exposure. We can use jokers for anything. So from that point of view, they're all great, but their number patterns are not what we're used to from the rest of the card. So when I saw that, I said, oh my God, how am I going to remember these differently from the rest of the card? Because it's so easy to just say everything's 3-4-3-4. These throw a wrench into my scheme. So specifically, when I looked at these and I said, why are these different? I first looked at the top one, the northeast, west, south. And I remembered a couple of years ago when we had the hand, top hand again of the north, of the Winds and Dragons section, we had only winds, only winds. It didn't have any dragons. It didn't have any flowers. It was only winds. But if you notice, it was 4 each, northeast, west, and a pair of souths. And that hand came and went, but we definitely had seen it several times where it was 4-4-4 and then just the pair. So the south became really valuable that year. They didn't do that this year. This year they have it. I'm going to go back up again to show you. This year they have it. Everything can be called for. There's no pair. It's just that the order is tricky. So I got really serious with my Winds and Dragons section. And I said, how am I going to memorize each of these things? They're all tricky. So now I'm going specifically to talk about the Winds and Dragons on the 2021 card. This is only for this year's card. These are the hands. And I'm even throwing in a few extra hands that involve Winds and Dragons. I'm going to throw in the 2021 hand here. That's actually, see, it's the north, it's the concealed hand in 2021 is actually identical to this hand, the northeast, west, south down here, just using, instead of the 4 flowers, I'm going to move them over here so you see it even more easily. Instead of being northeast 2021 west south, it's northeast 4 flowers west south. So again, because it's in the 2021 section does not mean it's not a Winds hand. I'm just trying to make you think about, even if it's not in the section that you're used to, it still may involve the tiles that you're looking for. So if you have northeast, west, and south and a 2021, you might go for this particular hand. Or in the Wind section, you might go for this hand that has 2021. Or this one with 2020. My point being, all the card interrelates. Don't get fixated on any one section of the card. You may find that they interrelate. So anyway, I'm looking at all these beautiful Winds and Dragons hands for 2021, including the singles and pairs one that involves winds. And I'm saying there's got to be an easier way to learn all of this, all of these different hands. So what I remembered was something that I've talked about on my blog before. It's something that I call the long E rule. The long E rule is a really quick way, a really great shorthand for you to remember what wind goes with what dragon and what wind goes with what kind of number. Because if you'll notice, for instance, second hand down, Winds and Dragons, you see how we've got the north-south and it says any odd number, and east-west, it has to be even numbers. The description is not even that helpful. It says any like odd dash even. You have to remember that the evens go with east-west and the odds go with north-south. But that's not going to necessarily come to your mind that easily, especially if you're looking at the card. The that can get confusing. Also going down to the 5th and 6th hands, the red and the green, that the east, you got 4 easts, the greens and the wests, or 4 norths, the red and the south. So what I had figured out a couple of years ago, this happens every year on every card. It's not just this year's card. There's a convention I call the long E convention. The way to remember how things go together is east, west, long E sound. East always goes with even tiles and green dragons. So keep your E in mind. Long E, we've got easts and wests going with evens. We've got easts and wests going with green, right? Likewise, the converse is we've got north and south going with the odd and with the red. So always remember, this is true every single year. If you're going to have east-west with a kind of number, it's going to be with the evens. And if it happens to be, it doesn't happen every year that they do this with the dragons, but if they do, east-west is going to go with green. Likewise, if you're going to do the north-south, it's always going to go with the red, odds and red. Okay, so we know the long E rule. But this year, so I'm talking about the convention that we've got every year, the long E rule. But this year, okay, so east-west, even numbers, green dragons, north-south, odd numbers, red dragons. This year, not only is that true, but there's some other really kind of funky things that I've never seen before on the card. Remember what I was talking about up here, how we had 4 north, 2 south, 4 east, 4 west? This year, we have, let me go to it, 3 norths, 3 souths, 2 east, 2 west. 4 north, 4 south, 3 east, 3 west. Everywhere you look, even down here with the north pair and the south pair, and the east and west are singles. And here, 3 norths, 3 souths, 1 east, 1 west. Whatever number of norths you have the same number of souths everywhere on the card this year. If there's 3 norths, there's 3 souths. If there's 4 norths, there's 4 souths. If there's 2 norths, there's 2 souths. Likewise with the east and west, identical number. Doesn't always happen. This year it did. Again, 3 east, 3 west, 3 east, 3 west, 2 and 2, 4 and 4. Wherever you have the same number of east is the same number of wests. So that to me was a really helpful thing, that no matter what you're doing, the same number of norths as souths, same number of east as wests. But then I noticed something else. Whenever you have all 4, other than when it's just the plain old news, NEWS, whenever you have all 4 wins involved, there's always more norths than souths. Always. There's 3 norths and 3 souths to the 2 east and west. There's 4 to the 3. There are 3 to the 2. There are 3 to the 1. There are 2 to the 1. There are always more norths and souths than there are easts and wests when they're all being used, except of course for plain old news. News is separate. That's always just 4 single tiles. But beyond that, whenever you're using all 4 wins, north always is the same amount as south. East is always the same amount as west, but there are always more north-souths than east-wests. So the way I abbreviate that, because I'm a math geek, is these are how you learn the entire Wind Dragon section. Remember your long E rule, green E, east-west, green E, even numbers, east-west. So that's the long E rule. And then north always equals south, east always equal west, and the north-south number is always bigger than the east-west number. So always remember that. That's a really helpful thing for remembering every single wins hand on this card. This, again, we're going to be sharing with you all. I can put this also in the comments section. This is my blog, as well as my email address. And if you ever want to just send me a note, ask me a question, I'm honestly quicker than the league sometimes. I've heard that they're not answering their phones sometimes. If you have a question about anything, you can always email me. If you say, how do I get to the blog? I can tell you that. I also, in the blog articles, I always, as I'm signing off, I always include my email through that. So plenty of ways to reach me. Always happy to help you with a question you might have. I'm going to stop sharing so I can go back to the chat box and paste these in here so that they're still there even after. There we go. So there it is. That's the link to the blog and the link to my email. The thing with the blog, I have written so much about the card this year. I have written about every single section, not just the right-hand panel. Every single section of the card I've reviewed, given you some shortcuts to each particular hand. I've talked about some other really helpful things, such as the fact that on this year's card, just about every single exposure on here is legal. It's crazy. You could put out 5 wins. You could put out 3 wins. It's all legal. The only thing that is not a single legal exposure this year is 3 flowers. We have quint flowers. We have quint. We don't have quint dragons, but we never have. So we have quint flowers. We have quint wins. We have quint numbers. We have 4 of anything. We have 3 of anything except for flowers. So just keep that in mind. No 3 flowers, no 5 dragons. Anything else is a legal exposure by itself. Things get a little bit hairier when you start having more than one exposure. But I'm just trying to give you a heads up for what not to put out, because I really don't want your hand to go dead if at all possible. I write about how you can switch hands within, once you've already made an exposure, you still aren't necessarily dead if you can find something else to play. That's one of the beauties of these hands, the ones I call 3/4s. If you've only got one exposure, nobody knows what you're playing, and it's quite likely that you could find another hand that you could go for if the hand that you were trying for goes dead. So I always encourage thinking ahead. That's the whole point of what I'm teaching you today, is so that you can think about what might work together. How could I switch my hand up if I needed to? You should always have a backup plan. You should always think about what would happen if I picked up another joker. Is there some better hand I could go for? I talk about supersizing hands. For instance, the quint section. The beauty about some of these quint hands, especially the third and the first one, neither of them involves pairs. So if you find yourself with a bunch of jokers and you just can't get that pair of flowers to complete something, you are better off going for the quint, because it is really hard to scare up a pair out of nowhere. That's what when you're trying to choose a pair, this is something that it took me a few years to learn. When you're trying to choose a hand, if you don't have the pairs, that's not necessarily the right hand for you. You should try to go for something that's attainable. I mean, you certainly have the option of going for the biggest challenge. That's up to you. But if you want to win, and especially in a tournament, when you want to win quickly, I recommend going for the easier hands, the 3/4s, or the hands that just are so readily available to you. If it involves jokers and you've already got the jokers, go for it. I mean, I'm sorry, my word choices today are terrible. If it has pairs and you've already got the pairs, go for it. That's what I meant. I am looking at the like number section is a perfect example of how, even if you have certain tiles and they don't perfectly fit that section, there might be a different hand on the card that would work for you. So understand where there are hidden similar hands. When I was talking about the 2021 hand in the Wind Dragon section, or likewise the Wind Dragon hand in the 2021 section, remember that sometimes there are extra hands that you could choose that aren't in your original section that you thought you needed to work with. The like number section has friends all over the card. You could obviously go for the like numbers hands that are there, but there's also a like numbers hand in Winds Dragons. There's the like number singles and pairs hand. And there's also sort of a hidden like numbers, for instance, in the consecutive run section. If you can get that third, fourth, fifth, sixth, that 7th hand down involves 2 like numbered Kongs. So for instance, if you put out 2 Kongs of 6s, nobody's going to know for sure whether you're going for either of the top 2 like numbers hands, or you very well could be going for that consecutive run hand. They don't know. In fact, that's probably a good thing for you too, that if you needed to switch it up, you could. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is my job here is to teach you to think analytically about what other options I've got on this card. My best secret trick this year, as I said, was learning that wind section. Like after today, you should have no problem at all with the Winds of Dragon section. But in general, I just want you to look for the patterns, try to remember what particular hands will work for your tiles by getting to know the card as well as you can. I am happy to open it up for specific questions. I think that's our best bet rather than me just sort of speculating wildly on the card. I'd much rather address whatever specifics you might have. I don't
Well,
think we've had,
actually, I'm looking at the chat and there's no questions. I'm kind of shocked.
I don't know if I
Maybe
went too fast, or I do
it's
recommend reading the blog because it reinforces things and it also gives you some new ideas that you might not have thought of. Um,
oh, there is a
oh, what to
question.
avoid passing? That's an
Oh,
excellent question. I love that. First of all, everybody knows what I think about Charleston's, right? There is something called Charleston karma that I talk about. And that's when you choose to stop the Charleston after the first left. Not because your hand is perfect, not because you've got 12 or 13 tiles, but because you couldn't make up your mind. When you're in that situation, because you've got 7 or 8 of this one and 7 or 8 of that one, and I can't decide. So I can't decide. I'm just going to stop the Charleston. When you do that, easily 95% of the time, you do not win because you didn't have a strong enough hand for either of them. So at some point, you got to keep going with the Charleston. I'm a big advocate of keeping going unless you absolutely cannot. So the question is what to avoid during passing. Uh, this is a secret that is going to be much more relevant once you play in person. If you know your group well, I mean, we've all changed our habits a little bit during COVID, but if you know your group well, you know that Jeanette loves to play winds, or Stephanie loves to go for the for the year hands. So you know who not to pass things to in general. But specifically this year, what I've been finding is that fours, if you see fours going around, grab them and build something from them with the like numbers, or from the even section, even like that closed hand, the one that's it's 4 pungs, twos and eights, and then three 2 pungs of the same number in the other 2 suits. Go for it in fours because nobody is holding on to their fours. Um, so that's one to hold on to if you see it going around. Same with wins. Now that you know the secret of the wins, if you have nothing else that's really strong, grab those wins because you see how versatile they are. And now you won't have trouble keeping straight how to use them. Um, Obviously, I personally never pass soaps. That's me. The people I play with know that if I'm passing a soap, I must have something really great going on. It's very, very rare that I will pass them. Not only because I love to play that particular hand, I love playing the year hands, but the soap is the most versatile tile on the card. There's a whole section for it, plus it's a dragon. So when I can choose my things to pass, I never pass a soap. It's always the first thing I discard if I don't need it, but it is the thing I will not pass. Likewise, this year being 2021, twos and ones are valuable. Twos and ones are always valuable um, from the number line point of view, because except for when you're doing the bell curve, just about every other hand goes in ascending. It increases as it goes along. I'm not sure why the league has always done that. I've never seen a hand that was started with ones being a Kong of ones and goes down. It never goes like that. It always builds up. So the lower end tiles are always more valuable because they're the ones that show up in pairs. 3, 6, 9, you're going to need a pair of threes. Whatever it is, for whatever reason, the lower end is always the hardest to get because you need a pair of them. So that's the tricky thing about Mahjong, the way they construct the card. Um, Flowers this year, as I said, there's no pungs. So you're either going to have to really fight for that pair or you're going to be using jokers to make the 4 or the 5. The biggest trick on this card with the flowers is remembering which hands use the Kong and which hands use the Quint. So that's going to be something to get used to. And the nice thing about this year's card, again, there are several different hands that use the Kong. I mean, the Quint of flowers. So you can't know exactly what somebody's going for if they put out 5 flowers. They might be in 3, 6, 9. They might be in consecutive run. They might be going for the Quint. And again, speaking of the Quint and the flowers, the funny thing about that top hand, the five flowers, four of any number, and 5 wins, you could get that with just one joker. So that's really, even if you think, I don't know if I could make that hand, I don't know if I should go for it, I think it's a really good quint hand to go for if you have nothing else compelling and you have a joker or two. It's not that hard to make, especially because of the Kong of the number. So I recommend that hand if you've got nothing else, but you've got some jokers. No pairs involved. It's a good hand to fall back on. So did that help you with figuring out what to avoid passing? I avoid passing flowers. I avoid passing soaps, but I always have. And when you can, if you have a choice, I would avoid passing 1s and 2s. That's just my choice this year. Try not to pass a pair of anything if you can. I mean, if you're forced to, you're forced to. But in general, try to pass things that are separate on the number line, like a 2 and a 7. That's a good thing to pass together. Do not try to pass things that are consecutive, like a 4 and a 5. Don't pass 2 4s in different suits. Try to break it up a little bit when you can. Okay. There's no closed hand in the like numbers. Was that a mistake? No, every year is different. Theoretically, you could say that that second one is a little bit harder to get because it's got the pair of one of the numbers. But no, they don't always have concealed hands in every single section. I don't know. The one thing I did notice about the concealed hands this year was that so many of them involve 4 pungs. The second, I guess the even section, the consecutive run section, the odd section, and the 3-6-9 section, actually, and the Winds Dragon section, all of those concealed hands involve 4 pungs. And pungs are generally easy to get. You only need 3. You can use a joker. But because they're concealed, that's what makes them hard. That's what makes them more valuable as a payoff. Because if those were open hands, please mark them off to know that they're not open hands. If they were open hands, they'd be super easy and people would be playing them all the time. So again, it was not a mistake that they put it that way. The only mistake that we're sure of on the card this year, and I hope you've already caught this. If you're on Mahjong, that's it. You would have noticed this already. I guess it's the 5th one down in consecutive runs, where it's 2 flowers and then 3 consecutive numbers, either in 1 suit or in 3 suits. 2 flowers, Kong, 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 either in all consecutive, either in the same suit or in 3 different suits. It can be any 3 consecutive numbers. It does not have to be 1, 2, or 3. It does not have to be that specific 1, 2, 3. That has been a little bit confusing for people when they first saw the card, but just so you know, the league did verify it can be any 3 consecutive numbers. Does not have to be 1, 2, and 3. Do you pass to the person who stops the game? That is a good question. If somebody stops the Charleston, do you say, okay, we'll do a pass? Frankly, for the optional. What I've generally seen people do is say, no, if you thought you were set, I'm not going to help you. We've all seen that woman that stops the Charleston and then says, I can pass 3. And we say, what are you talking about? You stop the Charleston, yet somehow you have 3 tiles to pass. That's their choice. You cannot tell somebody they're not allowed to stop the Charleston. But generally, I guess defensively, the smartest thing to do is say, no, I won't do a pass with you because you're the one that stopped the Charleston. My only concern is if you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You know, if you're limiting yourself by saying, I don't want any tiles from you. I can't give you that specific, definitive, every time, don't make the pass. I would say defensively, the smart thing is to not make the pass. That's about all I can tell you. Okay, Pung Kong patterns on the card. Was that a question because you didn't know what I was referring to when I tried to describe them before, or you just wanted to see some of them? Can that person unmute themselves to tell me what specifically they meant? It's somebody that came in under the name Mike Grimshaw, but probably isn't Mike Grimshaw.
Oh, yeah, I know who that is.
Mike Grimshaw, speak up. What did you mean?
Oh, I'm gonna unmute you. I see it. Okay, can you unmute yourself? There you go. Okay.
Got it. That was just interesting what you mentioned, and I'm Susan Grimshaw. Sorry, husband's
That's what I figured you weren't Mike, but okay.
Yeah. So I just couldn't. You went a little fast on that, where you said there were a lot of patterns, and I got the consecutive, but you mentioned others. So can you point those out? That would be
Sure. I'll put them back up.
Okay, and I'll mute.
Right. Oh, it's fine.
Oh.
basically it's just these are the ones that are specifically exactly a 3-4 hand. The idea of any Pung Kong hand is the idea that there's no pairs involved. It's 2 3 of a kind, 2 4 of a kind. And in this particular year's setup, it goes 3 and 4 in one hand, in one suit, and then 3 and 4 in the other suit. So it shows up in the consecutive run section. It shows up in the odd section on the lower end of the number line and the upper end of the number line. It shows up in the 2021 section. This one is a little trickier than most because it isn't really 2 suits. It could be all 3 suits, depending on what this 2 is and what this suit is. The only thing that we know for sure is that these are soaps. It can't be any other dragon. It must be soaps. So again, it shows up in the even section. It shows up in the like number section. It shows up in 369. That's what I call the official Pung Kong hand for this card, where it alternates 3-4 in suit A and 3-4 in suit B. There have been years like last year where it was 3-3-4-4. Every year it changes a little bit. This year's standard pattern is 3 of a kind in suit A, and then the next number, whether it's consecutive or like in odds where we skip a number, so it'd be the 1-3, 3 of the first, 4 of the second in suit A, then 3 of the third, 4 of the fourth in suit B. That's what I call this traditional Pung Kong hand. What threw me off this year was on the right hand side of the card, these little funky rearrangements. Instead of it being 3-4-3-4, northeast, west, south went 4-3-3-4. This one went 4-3-4-3. This one went 4-4-3-3. You see what I'm saying? That they're not what you'd expect if you were looking for 3-4-3-4. They're still all Kongs and Pungs. There's still no pairs, but the order is a little bit different than the rest of the card. So you have to remember that and not expect that you can always stick to those same patterns that we saw here. Did that help at all?
Yes,
Okay, great, great, great.
yes,
I'm gonna
thank
get
you.
rid of this.
Thank you.
Sure, sure, I'm gonna get rid of this. Could I put the PowerPoint in the black? I suppose I could. Let's see, go back and review the first part. When you say the first part, do you mean the thing about the bell curve? Sandy, is that what you meant? Sandy? I don't see Sandy.
Yeah, I'm looking for that person.
This Sandy with the blonde hair and the glasses? Did you mean the bell curve? Unmute. I'm gonna unmute. Or I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
I can't find Sandy.
I see her, but I'm asking her to unmute.
Okay.
Unmute. Got it.
Good.
There you
Okay,
are.
yeah, no, but you kind of answered it when you answered the last lady's.
Oh, about the 3-4?
Because yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to take pictures of some of the things you put up, and I didn't think about it at the beginning to remind me. So that's why I said review. If you could just flash
Okay,
the
you know
card.
what? You know what? If you
Or
want,
just the notes are okay, but
I was gonna say, Jerry, do you mind when you're giving them the email with my email address and the blog link? I could give you the PowerPoint to share with them too, if you think that would help them.
Sure. And the other thing is we're recording this.
Oh,
So it's
perfect.
So you can ask me for the recording, or you can go into the JCC on-demand library and review it.
oh, okay. Yeah,
So
because I'm a
there's
very
couple
visual learner. I like to have those things.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful. And a lot of this stuff, Sandy, is also in the blog. So if you
Okay.
go to the blog, you'll find it.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Jean P. Lily Breadbeck, I am with you. I rarely stop the Charleston too. I always find a way around it. Even when I'm going for singles and pairs hand, I still might make the second Charleston, even though I've got, 9 or 10 of the tiles, because especially if there are flowers involved, I might pass away one of the flowers knowing that there being 8 flowers, I have a pretty good chance of getting a flower during the game. So I generally figure I have a better shot at seeing 9 extra tiles by continuing the Charleston. It is very, very rare that I will stop the Charleston. So that's just my style. It sounds like you're on the same page with me, Jeannie. Good for you. Okay, people are asking for the PowerPoint. Address the need for a
Yes, I have.
joker.
Yeah.
Yes, Eleanor. God, I love that question. Thank you, Eleanor. Yeah, I call that the secret quint. It's not really a quint. The idea is just that you must have a joker to make that work. Just like in a quint hand, you must have a joker to make it work. The third hand in the 2021 section, it's all one suit. You have to have the Kong of twos and the 21 all in the same suit. So how can you do that when there's only 4 twos? The secret is you must have at least one joker. If you're going to go for that hand, you have to hold one of the natural twos in reserve. When you call for a 2 to expose it, like you've got you're going in bams, and you've got the 1 bam, and you've got 3 2 bams in your hand already, and you've got a joker. When somebody throws that 4th 2 bam, when you call for it and expose on your rack, use one of the jokers to expose it. Do not put out all 4 twos. Because if you do that, then you no longer will have that natural 2 for your 21. And you must have the 2 and the 1 must be natural in that third hand down. Everybody knows what I'm talking about? So you have to hold one of your natural 2s in reserve, which by extension means you have to have at least one joker to call for that exposure. You could have all 4 jokers. I don't mind. It's legal. You just have to keep the 2 that goes with the 21 must be natural. So it could be 4 flowers, 4 jokers, 4 soaps, and then a 21 in the 2 and the 1 must be in the same suit, whatever suit it is. That's all it has to be. All those other 4 twos could be jokers, no one cares. But the 21 itself must be natural in the same suit. Got it? I like that hand a
Karen,
lot. Yes.
I wanted to say that, why don't you finish the chat and then we can open it up for people to unmute, and Nicole can take care of that, where people unmute and ask questions verbally to give people a chance to do that. But
Great.
I have to.
I see 2 more points in the PowerPoint. I just want to make sure we got them.
Okay.
I love what Eleanor said. That was adorable. That odd and red helps you complete north. That's adorable. Thank you so much for that, Eleanor. That's really cute. Did you think that up just now, or you've always thought that? Just now you came up with it? Awesome. You get a gold star today. I love that. Okay, in the note on the top left hand, does white dragon mean soap? Yes. We call it soap. I think way back in the day when people were first starting to play Mahjong, there were certain ways, there's so many sets out there, but I think some of the white dragon tiles, some of them were absolutely plain, or they had a P or a B, which was Chinese for, I think it was Pao or Bao. But in any event, some of them were decorated to look a little bit like a soap. So people just started calling white dragon soap. But when you're playing Mahjong, you can still call it white. It's your choice. But yes, that's what I mean when I say soaps are the same as zeros, are the same as white dragons. And we don't use it like a 0 in the number line. Don't get confused. It's not a 0 for any other purpose than the only thing it's used for is to complete the year hand. It is not used to do like a 0, 1, 2, 3 for consecutive numbers. Don't make that mistake. It's not really a 0. It's just a 0 when we're talking about year hands. Okay? Now, are you ready to call on people, Jerry, or is Nicole going to be in charge of that?
Nicole is.
You ready, Nicole?
I'm ready.
Okay, if anybody has another question or wants to follow up on something that was confusing, I know some people have had trouble with the concealed hands in general or the singles. They're not sure whether they can call for a single for exposure. Oh, Pam Lucas has a good question. Okay. Ellen, we might get to yours after, but let's do Pam Lucas. What's your question?
I've never played in a tournament before, and I just wondered, I wanted to mark my card on that 2021, the third line down with a little J just to remind myself. Is it legal to mark your card if you play in a in-person tournament?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
You can do anything you want. Oh my God, Pam, I have the funniest story. I've taught all sorts of people. I had one woman that didn't like the way the card was organized. So she made a Xerox of it, cut it up, and rearranged it I don't know. I don't think she did any better by rearranging
Oh,
it, but
wow.
that was crazy. You can do whatever you want with your card, frankly. You can put little dots on every time you make a hand. Personally, I don't like to tip people off, so I don't mark up my card very much, because if I mark down how much I play the 2021 hand, they know what a sucker I am for it. I mean, all of you now know that's my favorite section. But if you didn't know that about me and you were against me in a tournament and you saw that it had dots all over it, you'd probably figure, aha, don't pass her soaps. So you don't want to give them too many easy ways of knowing what your favorite hands are. So putting a little J by that, there's
Okay,
no
thank
harm
you.
in doing that. Not at all. Okay, until someone else gets called on, Ellen wanted to know.
Yeah, just raise a hand if you want to be called on, or click the hand raising button in the chat.
In the meantime, I'm looking at Ellen's question. When do you decide to go for singles and pairs hand? It's more like it's a default that you're going to go for it because A, you have no jokers, or B, it's absolutely perfect for what you do have. But the beauty of going for a singles and pairs hand is nobody needs to know except you. So if it falls apart, it's been concealed the whole time anyway. I say you're not just going for it, you're going for other hands that are like it. You're leaning towards it in the beginning, but no one needs to know, and you don't have to definitively make up your mind. Say you've got a bunch of 3, 6s, and 9s. You're going to say, okay, I'm going for that 5th hand down in the singles and pairs. But meanwhile, I'm just collecting 3, 6s, and 9s. And if I happen to pick up a joker or two, maybe I will switch to, for instance, that first hand in 3, 6, 9 that requires jokers. Doesn't require them, but it helps them. It's just you can switch between hands pretty easily, knowing that you're already doing 3, 6, 9 and 2 suits. You're not tied to the hand at the end of the Charleston. I keep statistics when I go to tournaments. I write down every hand that I think I'm playing at the end of the Charleston versus every hand that I end up playing by the end of the game. 50% of the time, the hand that I thought I was playing at the end of the Charleston, I'm in a totally different section by the end of the game. Totally different hand, totally different section. So you can think that you know what you're doing at the end of the Charleston, but for me anyway, I think I know, and then I switch. That you may be one of those people that chooses it, rides it to the end, won't change. It's just my style to switch it and just keep every option open. That's the way I play. So you do not have to be married to something at the end of the Charleston, especially something that's a concealed hand. Nobody else needs to know. Pam, did you raise your hand a second time? Okay, wow. Nobody else? Nobody has questions or
Sorry,
comments?
Karen. Yes, I do. When do you move to a defensive mode? Is it after the third wall? Do you say, okay, I'm gonna protect myself now. I don't know, I can't do it. Or is it only based upon the game itself, or do you have a standard like, okay, this is not working, I'm gonna go defensive?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. That it definitely varies from game to game. If it turns out that the hand I was going for is absolutely unattainable and I kind of blocked myself in and I see from the other exposures that there's no way I can salvage it, then I'll definitely go to defensive. In general, if I'm 4 tiles away and there's only 20 tiles left, I know enough to say this is pointless, I'm not going to make it. So it depends on the particular hand, but I always pay attention to all the other exposures going on. If somebody's close, even after if they've already exposed 2 or 3 things by the end of the second wall, I'm going to be in defensive mode because I know they're getting close. They could be close and I wouldn't know because they're concealed, but if they've shown everybody that they've got 3 exposures, I'm going to start playing defensively. And now this is a trick for all of you going the other way. The bluffing trick that I will do at the drop of a hat is, even though I don't have a hope of winning a hand, I still might make an exposure or 2 towards something to put players on the defensive so that they'll break up their hands. Because a wall game is still better than losing. Yes, another of Bobby's sayings, besides luck favors the prepared mind, another thing Bobby says is, if you can't win, don't lose. So by not losing, by fighting it to a wall game, that's sometimes pretty good. That's a victory in a tournament for sure. You're still getting 10 points out of it if you can fight it to a wall game. So sometimes, like I said, I will put something out there just to put everyone else on the defensive. I won't expose something with jokers because why free up some jokers? Unless I know that that joker is, you know, represents something that's already been thrown, so nobody can redeem for it. But I will definitely, if I have no hope, I still might put out an exposure or two just to put people, you know, make them more defensive and break up their own hands. Did somebody?
We have a question. We have a
Thank you.
question. Oh, sorry. We have a question from Leslie Robinson. I'll unmute you.
Unmute.
There you go.
When you are starting with singles and pairs, can you tell us what hands you would convert to if you start getting jokers?
Oh, okay. Each particular one, hand by hand.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you notice, each one of those is like a baby hand of a different section. So obviously the first one is a like number Winds and Dragons section. So I would probably, depending on the number, if it was an even number, I would go to the evens, the east-west. If it was an odd number that I was collecting singles and pairs of, I'd go to the odd number, north-south. Especially if I was having trouble getting the flowers, that would be a good thing to go to. Because the nice thing about that particular hand is it doesn't require flowers. If you've got the pairs, that's the trickiest thing about that, the wind hand, the second one down. The hardest thing is getting those two pairs. And if you've already got them, often I'll say, well, all I need is two pairs and then a couple of jokers. It just makes all the difference for making that hand. So that's the obvious thing to go for. The other option, I suppose, would be that number one in the like number section, because it just uses the plain old news with the pair of flowers and then just two Kongs of the like numbers. So either of those would be the obvious thing to go to from the number one singles and pairs hand. Would be either the north-south with odds and east-west with evens, or the two Kongs with the news would be the two things to go for. The second one down, oh, I love this hand. This is what I call the true singles and pairs because it's all pair single, pair single, pair pair. We've seen it before. We've seen it in 369. We've seen it going down the number line 987. We've seen it going 1 2 3. This year they're doing it with odds, and it's two different hands. It's either the lower end of the number line or from 5 up to 9. You could see going to either the bottom hand in the 1 3 5s. You see what I'm talking about on the bottom, or basically depends on how strong your collection is. If you've got, for instance, all three of those pairs of 1 3 5s, then you might very easily want to go to either the second 1 3 5 hand or the fifth one. If you've got pretty good selection in two different suits, then you might look for one of the two suited hands in the odd section. Again, it really depends on what specifically you have when those jokers start to come in. The third one, the consecutive run, boy, you've got so many options with that one. Anywhere in the consecutive run, there are 1 2 3 4. There are 4 different hands this year that use single suit. So there are all sorts of options. And don't forget about the quint hand. The third quint hand, if you got a lot of jokers, you could switch to that third quint hand all in the same suit. So that third hand in consecutive runs, and the third hand in singles and pairs could go to just about anywhere, any of those 5, either the regular consecutive run hand, the 1 through 5, could go to that quint hand, or it could go to the third, fourth, or fifth consecutive run hand, depending on what you've got. You may choose, if you've only got 3 consecutive numbers, you would probably go for the third or the third consecutive run hand, or you would go for the quint hand. Okay, so then the 2 4 6 8 singles and pairs hand, that's the number 4. Again, depends on the distribution. I might go for the closed one. If I've got that pair of 8s, I might go for that third, fourth, the 6th one down. If I've got the flowers and I've got the 2 and the 8, again, I might go for that number 1 hand where all you needed in pairs were the 2 and the 8. And you've already got some flowers going on. So it, again, really depends what you've got in your hand. 3 6 9, I think we already mentioned what would you do with the 3 6 9, how you would convert that one. And then the 2021 hand, you got to just pick one and then go up to the 2021 section and decide. If you've got a lot of jokers, you might go for the third one. If you've got a nice distribution in all 3 suits, you might go for the first one. Coin flip. That is a heartbreaker. You could have the most beautiful Charleston, and for whatever reason, somebody just doesn't throw the third soap to you, and there's nothing you can do. You're just on call the entire game, waiting for that third soap for you to come out, and it just never does. That's how it goes sometimes. But yeah, that is a tough one. I love that hand, but it can break your heart. Okay, any other questions? I feel like I went so fast on that it's a good thing this is being taped so you could go through it again if you had a question. And as I said, I gave you my email, so you can always email me and say, what was that? Because I'm happy to go over it in more detail. Again, this is the problem with speaking, is I don't have all the visuals. When I'm speaking in person, I can get to a whiteboard, but I don't really have a whiteboard here. So it doesn't really
I see someone named Evie. Evie has a question. I can't
Where are
find
you, Evie?
you. Where are you?
Evie? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, or request to be unmuted. I can't find you.
Where's Evie?
I'm looking.
I don't think anybody named themselves Evie, did they? Maybe she just. Can you please repeat the known issue or point of confusion with the 21? Oh, the one that was confusing and everybody wanted to know from the league? Is that the one, Helen? Where's Helen?
She said yes.
Okay. It is the 5th one down in consecutive runs. It's 2 flowers and then 3
there's Evie.
Kongs.
Okay.
2 flowers and then 3 consecutive Kongs, either all in one suit or in 3 different suits. The problem is they weren't clear on the card that it can be any 3 consecutive numbers, but it can be. You could do 4, 5, 6. You could do 7, 8, 9. It does not have to be 1, 2, 3. The problem was, since it wasn't clear on the card when it came out, some people weren't sure. But you may do any 3 consecutive numbers, either all one suit or 1 in each suit. But it has to be consecutive. Be any 3 consecutive numbers. Okay, does that clear that one up? Thank you, Helen.
Evie's unmuted. She can go ahead and ask her question.
Okay, thank you. I'm a fairly new player, just a year.
Great.
So I'm confused when I get the first pick and I have 3 different suits, 1 or 2 of each suit. I mean, how do you decide what is there any tips on what decide what to keep, what not to keep? You know, odds or evens or just, I don't know. It just throws
I know,
me,
it's
and I
overwhelming.
get that a lot.
It's overwhelming in the beginning, absolutely. I don't mean to make a sales pitch, but that is exactly what my book talks about, because I was in your shoes, and that's why I wrote the book. I say it's perfect for people with about 6 months to 4 years of experience, where they know what a Charleston is, they know what all the tiles are, but they're they know they want to get better. So that is a really helpful book. But I will give you, in a quick summary, some of the best ways to look at your tiles to try and narrow down what you might go for. Don't get fixated on suit. Like, don't say, well, I've got 1s and 8s in dots, so I should stick to dots. Because 1s and 8s this year don't really go together, so it doesn't help that they're in the same suit. What you want to be thinking about are the various different ways they might work together. Do you have a lot of numbers regardless of suit? Do you have a lot of numbers on the same end of the number line? For instance, are they all sort of gathered in the very lowest end, 1, 2, 3, 4? Are they in the middle, a bunch of 4, 5, 6, 7? Are they a lot of them in the upper end, 6, 7, 8, 9? Do you have a lot of odd numbers regardless of suit? Do you have a lot of even numbers regardless of suit? Do you have more wins than anything else? Do you have a bunch of 3, 6, 9s? You just have to. What I tell people, especially during the Charleston, the game that I play is that Sesame Street game. One of these things is not like the others. I look at all my tiles and I say, oh my gosh, just about everything here is even if some of them are red and some are green, whatever. It's all even tiles except this 7. I'm not keeping this 7. Or you see what I'm saying? You sort of, by process of elimination, you're sort of clearing it out. It's like weeding. You're clearing out the things that don't fit, and eventually a hand will start to reveal itself. I tell people you're looking for a neighborhood. You're looking for a section of the card that makes sense. You're not honing in on a specific hand right away, but like you'll say, oh, I've got a lot of evens, or I've got a lot of numbers in the middle of the number line. Oh my gosh, look, most of these numbers, it's all 4s and 5s. Is there a hand that involves 2 consecutive numbers? And I might say, oh, look, number 3, 4, 5, 6. Hand number 6, I could go 4, 5, 4, 5, and then 6 in the third suit. I just sort of try to narrow it down by cutting out the things that are extraneous. That's the best tip I can give you, is figure out, it doesn't make sense because they're all similar numbers by number line, similar numbers because they're all odd, similar because they're all even. They're not all going to be anything, but I will look for, oh, I got like 6 or 7 odd tiles. I'm going to go with odd tiles. See what I'm saying? You look for a preponderance. You're not looking for it to absolutely reveal itself in the deal. It never is going to show you exactly when you first get your tiles. But if you see a preponderance of odd numbers, go with odd. If you see a whole bunch of numbers on the top end of the number line, like it's all 7s, 8s, and 9s, you're going to be thinking consecutive runs are like numbers on the upper end of the number line. Just by weeding out the stuff that doesn't work and seeing what comes into you, it helps. You'll see. One game that I play by myself is something called Charleston Solitaire, where I will literally set up all 4 racks. Like it's a deal. Everybody's got 13, 13, 13, and 14. I'm being all 4 players simultaneously. And I try to play an entire Charleston, maximizing each of the 4 racks. So that each one, this one seems to have a lot of even tiles. I'm going to get rid of the odds. This one seems to have a lot of, it's got a whole bunch of consecutive numbers in the BAM. So I'm just going to be collecting BAMs. And so as the Charleston progresses, you are building each of those 4 hands simultaneously. It's a really good way to get familiar with, how do I cut out what I don't need? How do I incorporate what comes in? Just the more you do it, I'm just trying to tell you all different tips, so that the more that you do this, the more experience you get at it, it gets easier. And you start to know what kind of things to look for. You start to look for matching dragons. You start to recognize that, oh, if I've got all these even numbers and I have a few wins, I've got a north, an east, and a west. And if they're all even numbers, I'll get rid of the north, for instance. So that's what I'm saying is, as time goes on, you start to look for what makes sense. So that's why I'm trying to give you tips of, these are the kind of things to be thinking about. Think about evens, go with west, north, west, east, or think about like numbers are good this year, things like that. I hope that's helpful. I do recommend the book. I do completely recommend reading the blog. It's free. You'll get a lot of tips from that. And like I said, if you like the blog, you might buy the book. It'll give you more ways of thinking about the card and how to pick better combinations for your hand. Barbara has her hand up. Okay.
Thank you.
Rosalie has a question in the chat. If you have no jokers for most of the game and the singles and pairs are not, oh, it went fast, are not possible, what do you look to do?
Oh, Jeannie, recommending somebody else. Oh, okay. Okay, if you have no jokers, it is tough. There are going to be times that you can't win. I mean, there's something I talk about in my book that I talk about in all my lectures, that realistically, you should only expect to win 20% of the time against evenly matched players. So there'll be days when you're super hot and you're getting lots of jokers and you're getting every tile you need. There are going to be days when you can't get a joker to save your life. So don't feel bad when you can't win a hand and you can't figure out what to play because you just don't have a strong enough compelling hand. What do you look to do? You look to play defense. You look to try and see if you can at least get a couple of pungs going, especially if you can call for them. Especially if you can't make that singles and pairs hand, don't go for a closed hand unless you've got all the other pungs. It is hard to make a hand without jokers, that's for sure. What else would I do? I would mainly, I liked what someone else said, where if she doesn't have anything to win, but somebody throws a flower and she has 3 flowers, she might just call that 4th flower anyway, just to, it's kind of like, I call that dog in the manger. You're sort of grabbing that flower so no one else can get it. I see the value in that. It's a good defensive strategy. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just play defense. So if I don't have the jokers and I just don't have the tiles that make a lot of sense, I suppose one good hand is that third, fourth, fifth, that sixth one down. It's not a closed hand in consecutive fronts. It's not concealed, but it does involve pair pong, and then one Kong. But again, it's really hard to make without the jokers.
Okay. Let's see. I reposted your blog information for everybody.
Okay, great.
Oh, Barbara, let me unmute you.
Oh, Barbara's waving. Hi, Barbara. What's up? We're gonna unmute you. Wait, unmute yourself. You have to unmute. Yay! There you go.
Actually, this is Barbara. I'm Tani. I signed up separately, but we just are watching together.
Awesome.
We live together. I have two questions. One is, I was wondering if you could give us the instructions on how, or if is it in your book, on how to do the Charleston Solitaire?
Real easy. You don't even have to set up all the tiles. Just take any, well, you put your racks out, you know, as if you were setting up the table. You've got four separate racks, and you literally just take any 13 tiles on rack A, 13 on B, 13 on C, 14 on D, because somebody's going to be east. And then you literally, each rack, one at a time, you're going to set it up, you know, put your flowers on the left, and then your suit, and you try and maximize each hand. What you're doing is you're looking at each hand, you say, okay, I'm passing this to the right, and player B, she's passing 3 to the right. And you literally go through an entire Charleston. It probably takes an hour, but it is such a good instructional exercise.
So at some point, though, you're not doing the Charleston, you're playing the game, right?
You could if you wanted to. That would take even longer. But you are serious. The point is you're looking at each hand very analytically to figure out how you're going to make it better.
Right.
And you don't, the other thing I remind people, don't have a vested interest in the success of any one of them. You're trying to make each one as good as it can be. And you'll see it just sort of naturally happens. You know, you got rid of these 7s and 9s because you didn't need them, but rack over here, it's perfect for them.
Mm-hmm.
So you see how each hand shapes itself up over the course of a Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
It's really very interesting. But again, you really have to have an hour to set aside to do it, but very educational.
And my other question is, on Real Mahjong, I used to have a friend who played, she's not playing so much now, but it was nice because we knew who each other was. Is there anything with this group where we might be able to know the other people's names? So we say, oh, so-and-so is playing, I want to jump in on that game.
That's a really nice idea. I don't know if Irvine, Doris, do people in Irvine do that? Or do you already arrange to meet with your friends? Or is there a way for the community to sort of?
Oh, no, I meant just like when you're on Real Mahjong, you know how it'll show you who else is up there?
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying for these people. So you're saying if everybody just here right now said, this is my Real Mahjong name?
Yeah. I mean, I was just wondering if the group or anything that does that. It would just be fun to know I'm playing with, you know, Doris or something, or I'm playing with, you know, Betty or something. But if you don't know what their name is on there, you'd never know.
Well, when you're playing with them, you can send them a message on the Real Mahjong chat and say, I'd like to play with you again. You're fun. You go at a good pace, and then try and get there, or take a pic, write down their name, and then look for them. Put their name in the box on the Real Mahjong. You can search for them. And then it also tells you who you've played with before. So you can always see who you've played with before too. It shows you that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, I forgot about the little chat thing that you can say, I'm in Newport Beach. Are you in this area or something?
Yeah, that happens a lot, especially late at night. People are kind of chatting quite a bit.
Right.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi there, Doris. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, friends functionality, very nice. Online Solitaire Charleston. There is a new app, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there's an app that's actually really helpful for doing Charleston. Shoot, I wish I could remember it, but it's by somebody called 8BAM. So if you went online and asked for, let me do that. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go real quick. Even as I'm talking to you, I'm going to be searching for the 8BAM people. they made a software that is a beautiful way. 8bam.com. It's mobile gaming. It's great Mahjong practice. It's called Mahjong Practice 2020. I'm not sure if 2021 is ready yet, but it is fantastic for playing. It shows you how close you are to any number of hands. Like, say you've got some dragons and some this and some that. It'll say, oh, you have 8 of the tiles needed for this hand, or 6 of the tiles needed for that hand. It's really helpful. It costs $2 or $3, but it's called Learn Mahjong. As I said, the vendor's name is 8bam, and I'm giving him a free endorsement because I really like his product. So I can recommend you that as a really useful way to practice without tying anybody else up. I personally do a lot on Real Mahjong just against the bots because I can't predict when the phone's going to ring or when somebody's going to need me. So I would much rather not tie up my friends. So I just practice against the bots so I can drop a game if I need to. But it's a really good way to get up to speed is just playing against the bots on Real Mahjong. 8bam, the words 8 and bam. 8bam. I'll type it in here again. 8bam. Yeah, I was so impressed with that. That was a 2020 version. They should be having 2021 out soon. You are welcome, Susan. It's really a very good software. Oh, Eleanor, you are so right. Eleanor needs to be my pen pal, I think, because I'm a Mahjong philosopher. I talk about the social and emotional benefits in this game. You are completely on the same page with me. You get it. You get it, Eleanor. Okay, anybody else have a question about a specific hand or calling a player dead or anything like calling a player's hand dead? I'm sorry, it's very important. We're calling their hand dead. Be very careful. It becomes very political. Okay.
I'm not seeing any more hands, so.
Oh, Barbara's hand is up again.
Oh, Barbara's
Barbara,
hand's
go
up
ahead.
again.
Okay, unmute Barbara. Unmute.
Barbara, you have to go ahead and unmute yourself.
So it's not Barbara, it's Barbara's friend.
Yeah, I'm sorry, since nobody, but I will stop the Charleston if I have like almost a full hand and I would have to destroy it in order to keep going. I don't do it if I can't make up my mind, but if I have like a really strong hand and I know that I'm gonna have to tear it up, I'll stop the Charleston. I always get a hard time about it.
Do you win?
Often,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what were you playing? Because it does matter what you're going for. There are ways you could keep the Charleston going. I mean, yeah, I can see where if you don't want to pass away the other tiles and you're really confident that they're not going to give you anything better the second go round, you could stop it. It's just that I find, especially if I'm going for an exposed hand, say I'm going for something that needs 9 cracks and it needs 4 9 cracks and I've already got all 4 9 cracks. I could pass away one of those 9 cracks knowing when somebody throws it, I can call it for an exposure. The only time it's tough is when you're going for a concealed hand, and especially a singles and pairs hand. It's hard to break up any of those pairs because you don't have any guarantee that it'll come back. That's where I said that breaking up a pair, especially of flowers, is a safer bet than any other pair because there's 8 of them. So the chance of getting the flower back is pretty good. Either you'll pick it or maybe you'll get it passed back to you. Doubtful, but it's possible. Not most people don't pass flowers, but even so, it's very rare that I'll find that I'm so strong with my hand that I've got 12 tiles literally that I would stop the Charleston.
Okay.
It's very rare for me to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like Pamela Lucas has another question.
Dixie has a good question later too.
Karen, you just said if you had 4 9 cracks and you could throw it away or pass it in the Charleston knowing it would come back to you. Would you do that as a ploy, or just if you wanted to keep going and I
wouldn't. It would only be so that I could keep going with the Charleston, and that's
okay,
only
all
on
right.
the.
I just wondered if that was one of your maneuvers. Okay, thanks.
No, and that's only for the second left or the across, because for the second right, left across right, right across left. For the second left, for the second right, you can do a blind pass. So I don't feel compelled, and for the optional, you can do an optional. So it's only for that second left and that second across that you have to come up with something to pass. So that's when I would break up my Kong and say, okay, I'm going to pass that. But otherwise, I wouldn't break it up if I didn't have to. What you're saying, if I threw it because maybe then other people would pass me more nines thinking that I wasn't going for that hand, I don't know. I wouldn't take that risk. I don't think they'd be reading the tea leaves that closely during the Charleston. Okay, Dixie had a good question. Is there a penalty for calling a hand dead if the hand is not dead? Oh, yes, there is. Sometimes it's financial, but in a tournament, you really got to be careful. If you call a hand dead, but it isn't, that player will call the tournament director over. She can analyze the situation right there and then. And if you were the one that called her hand dead, you yourself are then out of that particular game. Obviously, the next game you can play. And the main penalty, honestly, for being called dead or being dead and out of a particular hand is if it goes to be a wall game. Because if it's a wall game, everybody else gets 10 points. You don't get anything, and that's a shame. With your friends, you're still going to have to pay money. If if that person wins the hand, you're still going to have to pay it, even if your hand goes dead. So it's much more significant in a tournament. Be very sure before you call a hand dead. People have called my hand dead in a tournament because they were only looking at one section of the card. They didn't realize there was another hand in a different section that I was going for. They were like, well, you can't make that. You don't have X. And I'm like, that's not the hand I was going for. My hand is still completely viable. So then she was out for calling me dead. Okay, we get that. Be careful in a tournament.
Well, I'm back. Nicole is gone. We had a very short meeting, so
Wow,
I'll
that was
help
fast.
out in any way that I can. Are people waving their hands? What are you?
We
guys
haven't
doing?
had too many. We've mostly gotten our questions and comments from the chat section. I'm just checking. Does everybody feel like I've addressed your questions? If you chat now or forever hold your peace if you still have another question you wanted to raise.
Oh, Barbara.
Okay, I just have a quick question. If you discard a tile and you miscall it, what are the consequences of that? Because a lot of times somebody will throw down a 2 bam, but it's a 2 dot. And then they'll say, that's a 2 dot, so the other girls. But
Okay.
is that in a tournament or something, I mean, technically, is that a really bad thing to toss a tile and miscall it?
You try to do your best always. When I direct a tournament, it might be different than other people's rules. My rule is if it has to do with exposures and Mahjong, it's important. If it's just in passing, during the course of a game, you threw out a west and you called it east and nobody wanted it and it's not a big deal. My attitude with something like that is, yes, you misnamed it, but no harm, no foul. Nobody called for it. It wasn't a big deal. Keep playing. However, there are specific rules about misnaming a tile that someone needs. I do not have the encyclopedic knowledge of the rules at this very moment. It's written on the Mahjong card. If you want, I can private email you. I can look up the specific answers.
That's
The
okay.
basic point is do your best to call it properly. But yes, there is a penalty if you miscall a tile that she needed for Mahjong. There are consequences, yes. So do your best to be accurate. A tournament can be very intimidating, I will tell you. You're out of your comfort zone. You're playing a little faster than you're used to. You're playing with people you're not used to playing with. It's really good for you to think outside your usual routine. But the first time you're doing it, give yourself a break, take a deep breath. It's going to be fine. It usually takes 2 or 3 hands before you sort of feel comfortable and you're like, oh yeah, it's just Mahjong. It's what I play with my friends. But it can be very intimidating in the beginning. People get very upset if you, play a little too slowly, or if you're not allowed to pick from the other end of the tiles. And people make mistakes they would never make in their normal game, but they're a little overwhelmed. So the first tournament in person, I think online it's easier. The first tournament in person can be a very intimidating thing. You have my sympathies, but I do recommend it just to get your skill level challenged that much more. It's really overall a very good experience.
Thank you.
Okay, Irene, might be the last question. Do you stop the Charleston only when you have a definitive hand you don't want to break? Are there any other instances? Oh yeah. If I had so many jokers that there was so few things that I could play, it's not like I have a particular hand in mind. But if I have jokers and some dragons that I don't want to pass